Hello, hello.
Unmute yourself. There we go. Awesome.
Very good.
Fred, Pete, this is Fred. Freddie.
Hey,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Anybody else in? Yeah, go ahead. Let them in. Let them in. They won't be able to see us or say anything.
Yeah.
Well, they'll be able to see you,
Well, yeah, I mean, they won't be able to say anything.
but they won't be able to say anything.
Look at that big group of people.
Oh, good, good. Oh, yep. People are joining us.
Heck yeah, look at this group.
I thought that was Rob Bell there for a second. Anthony looks like Rob a little bit.
That's right. Anthony, you got a Rob Bell lookalike. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I like Kenny's painting in the background. It's very fancy, sophisticated.
All right, we're gonna give it just another minute before everybody gets in.
Okay, can I say one thing very quickly then? when I sent you that video, I was thinking it was going to be cropped in, so you can see my pajama bottoms. I'm like, I was all dressed kind of formally from the top down, and then like in my pajama bottoms.
I thought that was the LA thing, man. I thought those were some high-end joggers.
You know, like that's the kind of, like, I'm glad I was wearing something. I'll tell you that much for nothing. My goodness, this is the coronavirus age where we're all naked from the waist down.
Our producer says if you hadn't had pants on, he would have cropped it.
Okay, yeah.
It got handed off last minute, and I don't think that got communicated through, but it turned out awesome. It was
I'll crop it for next week.
yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm going to look over here and see if there's anybody else trying to get in. I think we should have everybody in that wants to be for now. Let me see. All right. Good looking group of people here. All right. So you guys are all muted. We can see you. Apparently you guys can see us. Freddie got to sit in because he was here anyway. So we're gonna I think really just kind of open up initially for I want to now that Pete has sort of seen all of that together. I know we were like creating content. He was doing it in bits and pieces over a few weeks. So I'm just wanting to give him the first couple minutes to sort of summarize and maybe especially knowing this congregation, where would you kind of specifically steer the conversation based on the first talk?
Great. Yeah, so Ben's absolutely right when he was in there earlier saying like there's actually a lot in what I was saying. So you may have been kind of tuning in for a light Sunday evening reflection and then got Tillich and philosophy or whatever. But what I was interested, whenever Ben first contacted me, and we talked about doing a series of 3, one of the things we talked about was this notion of anxiety. And I thought, it would be fun to do 3 talks looking at this type of how we try to escape anxiety. And so anxiety is a type of living between what you have and what you don't have, right? It's a feeling of kind of not knowing what you should do. And I wanted to kind of look at the anxiety that's caused between knowing and not knowing, the anxiety that's caused between having and not having, and the anxiety that's caused between kind of spiritual thoughts and earthly thoughts. So those are the 3 things I wanted to do. And this first session was really an attempt to explore, in theological terms, a type of knowing unknowing. Now, this is very close to what's called the apophatic tradition in theology. So I was doing something very connected with mysticism, which is the idea that we can speak of something while also remaining silent about it. What can be called a theopoetics. So there's a type of speech which also respects what it speaks of. It kind of draws you into something that you cannot quite grasp. And so that first talk, really everything I was trying to do was trying to talk about a type of speech that somehow respects the impossibility of what we're trying to speak of. So there you go, in a nutshell.
So it was funny when you're describing like and I think Grace was the one that said that, the opening 3 minute was like, it made us anxious just naming, what's going on in the world. And I'm sort of sitting here, first of all, honestly, like I put myself on the couch and I go, man, is it typical to have that trifecta and have all three at the same time? And I think that this point in history, that there are a lot of people who are struggling with, I don't know the things that I need to know. I don't have the things that I need to have. And I feel like, whatever the language is, if it's spiritual, if it's about meaning or purpose. But the thing that I got, that I just started thinking about is I wonder if we looked at the extent to which people compensate with one or the other. And I think about people who are extremely religious, but don't have much, but they're fine because of what they know, even though they don't have. And then I've seen it the other way, where people have all the money in the world and they're miserable and they don't have any meaning in their life, but it's okay because of what they have. It doesn't matter as much what they don't know. And so I sort of see that push and pull culturally, where we almost engineer people to compensate if they feel like they're missing in one area, to almost be, to be almost antagonistically sure in another area.
Yes. Yeah, no, we're always, I don't know if I mentioned it in the talk or not, where I talk about religions of nihilism and religions of hedonism, but you could talk about religions of hedonism, or the religions sacred and secular. It could be CrossFit, it could be yoga, it could be whatever, but that says that you can have what will fulfill you, that will satisfy you. You'll get rid of your anxieties through having. And then religions of nihilism are ways of saying we can get rid of your desire entirely so that you don't feel the anxiety of not having. And so much of what we do in life is we're trying to flee to one of those, trying to find some way to avoid what Jean-Paul Sartre said, how we're condemned to freedom, the experience of being in the middle. Now, in contrast, Søren Kierkegaard would say that actually our freedom is in our anxiety. Anxiety is the evidence of our freedom, and that actually it's being able to stand in that space of the in-between. That's actually the most productive space. It's the most fun space. It's the most satisfying space. And it's just, for many of us, we don't know how to enjoy that. We find it too much. But what I was trying to kind of explore is the idea that actually our anxiety is not something to get rid of with tablets or money or knowledge. It's actually something that, as I say, for Søren Kierkegaard, is evidence of our freedom and of basically, yeah. Well, we can. I could talk all night. I also.
No, that's good. I absolutely. I'm going to let you guys jump in. Anybody if you want to raise your hand, and we'll call on you so you can unmute and
Type in the chat.
Yeah, or if you want to type in the chat, Brandon can unmute you because he's kind of manning that. Anybody got a thought or question? Yeah, Jim Kane.
Did he private message you? Because I didn't get it.
No, he just raised his hand. Here, I can probably do it too. Okay. You should be good, Jim. Nope, stand by. There you go.
Okay. I recently read a book called Missing Out by the psychoanalyst Adam Phillips, and he has a chapter in that book on not getting it. And your talk tonight reminded me of that chapter, and I found that a sort of a difficult concept to get, although I understood it in a rather simple way. That there's some people that have that feeling that there's something about life that they don't get, and I would put myself in that category, which would correspond with Robin's character, I suppose. Does that? Are you familiar with that book, and does that concept kind of match what you were talking about?
100%, Jim. I'm really pleased to hear you're reading Adam Phillips. Adam Phillips is a great writer, someone I've read many of his works, and I know that book, Missing Out, very well. And so, yeah, it fits very neatly with that. If I could say a couple of things about the psychoanalytic approach. So basically, for Lacan, the psychoanalyst Lacan, who is my hero, there's the objective desire, which is what we want. And then there's the object cause of desire, which is what makes us want it. And the object cause of desire is actually what gets in the way of the thing. So we want a house, and we have to save up the money. We have to look around houses. We have to look on the internet and look at all these places. And we think that we'll be satisfied when we get the object of desire, the house. But it's actually the object cause of desire that feeds the desire. And the object cause of desire is saving up the money, looking at the houses, going round all the places. So what happens for us is when we get the object of our desire, we lose the object cause of desire. So we no longer desire what we desire. So in psychoanalysis, there's a great comeback to the person who says, fulfill your dreams. And the Freudian comeback is, yeah, fulfill your dreams so that you realize how ridiculous your dreams are, how abjectly horrific they are, how impotent they are, that only when we fulfill our dreams do we realize that our dreams do not fulfill us. So what Adam Phillips is talking about is exactly on par with this, which is technically, how do we realize that the joy of life is actually in the struggle of life itself? And that's what psychoanalysis helps the analysand, the patient, do. The analyst helps the analysand realize that they enjoy the struggle of their lives. They just don't know it.
That is awesome. How can you come back to the? Well, I think it was in the stuff you were talking about, myth, and the thing that occurred to me was that part of the. I'm trying to think about how this pertains to this, like the personal spiritual experience of an individual. And I think for me, it very often manifests as that tension of the feeling of presence and absence. And I loved that the way you distinguished contemplation versus, joy or enjoyment. I feel like very often that is what plagues me, is that I'm in an experience that I objectively know should be a joyful experience, and I am in my head overanalyzing it, not enjoying it, and wondering why I'm not enjoying it. So that spoke to me. If you wanted to say a little bit more about that, maybe especially what's the function of myth in community and helping us to kind of break free from that.
Yeah, and the reason why I use C.S. Lewis, by the way, is because C.S. Lewis is a very conservative wild character, but I found this story of his fascinating. It sounds more like something like Jean-Paul Sartre would write, not C.S. Lewis. Very dark ending, doesn't sound like Lewis at all. But, and so I kind of love to use it because Lewis, understood at maybe his deepest insight in terms of theologically is that there is a type of dialectic living in between that religious discourse draws us into, and that we can't close it down. Now, by the way, this is not just in religion, right? So in politics, it's called democracy. Democracy is the antagonism within social reality that means that the social body is not one. And democracy is the recognition of the not at oneness of the social body that generates complexity. In biology, it's called evolution. Evolution is the name for the non-at-oneness of the organism, both with its environment and with itself, that generates complexity. In physics, it's called quantum indeterminacy, the idea that reality itself has a type of duality that generates all of being. In psychoanalysis, it's called the unconscious. The unconscious is the not at oneness of the individual with themselves. And within mathematics, it's called Gödel's incompleteness theorem, right? So there's names for this in all different disciplines. And in theology, I would call it salvation, but not traditional Christianity, but I was
going to say, I thought it was sin, but yeah, I guess that is salvation for us.
Yes. I mean, I love the term original sin, because original sin, if you take the morality out of it, right, all of that, what original sin means is original meaning first, and lack meaning a not at oneness. So in psychoanalysis, there's this notion that to be human is to experience a type of not at oneness with yourself. And so actually, I think original sin can be redeemed in some way, but that might take us far from where we're at today. So
let me pause and just see if I can summarize your work in a sentence or two right here, just in terms of what we're trying to do tonight. So part of what you're saying is if we had like an existential creation story connected to this particular church, we might summarize it like this: all people have this not at oneness, and we are not content with the not at oneness. Rather than thinking that we can fix the not at oneness, the invitation is to learn to be content with the not at oneness.
Yes, yes.
Is that the whole thing summarized?
That's like, you know what? I don't ever say that anywhere else, because that's me out of a job, because that's my whole vocation right there, right?
It's only taken me 9 years with you for me to get it at that level. So
yeah, that's beautifully said. And for anyone who's into philosophy, oh no, there's a hand. I see a hand from
all right,
Dan.
Dan Hensley. Let me see. I can. You get there first.
Yeah.
All right.
I just need to know the name.
Okay. One of the things, it's funny because you hit home with a couple of things. I just bought a home, and I thought I would never own a home. And, you said, well, you get the home and then suddenly it's something else. It's always something else. And I'm a person who takes a lot of pride in my home. And I thought, well, there'll be a point where I'll get it to exactly where I want it to be. And the truth is, it's like your life. You're never going to have it quite decorated the way you want it. And I've been in 4 long-term relationships. I'm 67. And those were great relationships. They just weren't the end. And I've always felt that way about, I don't need to be completed. And to some degree, that's made me very happy to feel incomplete. And it's funny because you talk about myths, and I'm a big Campbell fan. And there's these universal myths that almost everybody adheres to. And the truth is, in actuality, they're just about the struggle. And the reason why we enjoy the myths is we enjoy listening to the struggle. And I think when you learn to, for me, it helps when I apply that to my life. I fail all the time. That's okay. I am incomplete and I'm happy with that. But I'm not happy with it, but I'm settled into it. And I feel that when you reach that point at the different stages of your life where you can say, I'm happy here, but I know this is going to change, and that's okay. And I think when you reach that point, you can move on. Sometimes you move back. It doesn't matter if you move back. Sometimes you have to. But if you're satisfied with that and you realize that, it makes it much easier. Yes. It relieves the anxiety.
100%. That was beautifully said. And if someone goes to psychoanalysis as an example of this, say I go to an analyst and I have some symptoms. A symptom, the definition of a symptom is the kind of the coagulation of a contradiction. So for example, I'm crunching my teeth, right? And then I find out that I'm crunching my teeth because I want to shout at my boss, but I also don't want to get fired. And so the symptom, what's called the compromise formation, is I'm clenching my jaw. In other words, I want to shout and I want to keep my mouth shut. So through analysis, I discover this contradiction, right? And I work through the contradiction. Now in normal counseling, the idea is you work through the contradictions of your life until you get to beyond the contradictions. But in psychoanalysis, it's more interesting, is that contradiction then leads to a bigger one. It's like, it's not just that I'm annoyed with my boss and also not annoyed, but actually this is how I feel with my partner. And so it then goes to your partner, and then you start to look at that. And then it goes to your family. And then it goes to what it is to be human, being a creature between life and death. And what you discover is every contradiction is resolved by going into a deeper contradiction and a deeper contradiction and a deeper contradiction. And the cure is when we finally realize that the contradiction isn't something we can get rid of, because we are the contradiction. Like, to be human is to be the incarnation of the universe's contradiction. And then when you experience that, then you're free. And the philosopher Hegel is the one who charts this journey. So yeah, this is the journey for me that we kind of are on. We see these contradictions in our lives, and then we try to resolve them, and we're always trying to resolve them. But what you're talking about is actually there's a point where you are able to enjoy the contradictions, and that's salvation.
So would we not to get too religious, but to camp on the theological perspective? I'm wondering if we would say that our perspective is attempting to reconcile living with both what we would call sin and grace at the same time, rather than Christianity being that grace is the solution to sin, but rather that it's the incarnation of those two living together.
Well, actually, I would say that grace is. Can I go
Jump.
first? For a little bit?
Yep, go.
So very quickly, right? The whole Bible starts off with this really interesting story. It's an Oedipal story. So if you know Freud's work, you know there's the Oedipal story is Oedipus wants to sleep with his mother. His father gets in the way. He kills his father, sleeps with his mother, and it's a disaster, right? Now, very basically, the reason for that story is that for Freud, these are symbols. So the mother can be seen as a symbol of wholeness, returning to the womb, oceanic oneness, right? So to return to the mother is to return to a pre-broken state. The father is anything that gets in the way. So if you think making millions will be a return to homeostasis, whatever gets in the way of that's the father. Oedipus breaks through, sleeps with his mother, and it's a disaster. Which is the psychoanalytic way of saying when you get what you want, you realize it's not what you want. But you're unhappy if you don't get it, and you're unhappy if you do. That's why Schopenhauer said we live between melancholy and depression, because he said pain and boredom. The pain of not getting what you want and the boredom of getting what you want, right? So the Bible starts with a great Oedipal story, Adam and Eve, then there's a fruit tree, and then there's a prohibition. And the tree, the serpent says, if you eat from the tree, you'll be like God, which means you'll lack the lack, you'll be whole and complete, right? And the prohibition gets in the way of that. They break through the prohibition, think it's going to be wonderful, but it's a disaster. Now, in psychoanalysis, the internal, external voice that's always telling you to be whole and complete is called the superego. The superego is the voice that's always saying you have to do X, Y, and Z, and then you'll be happy, right? Do this, do that, marry this person, have more friends, whatever it is, right? In the Bible, it's the serpent. So the serpent is the superego injunction that's telling you, you have to get to this and then you'll be complete. Grace for me is the technology, the exorcism of the superego injunction. So grace is the experience that I don't need to do anything. So it's the breakdown of the mechanism of movement towards an ideal. So it's the opposite of self-help. It's step zero in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You've got your 12 steps, but the first step is you don't have to do anything. You're just in a room of people who accept you for who you are and say you don't have to change. And the irony is only in realizing that you don't have to change are you able to change. So that's the whole Pauline thing about, well, Paul Tillich defines grace as the acceptance you're accepted, or you don't have to do anything. So I would say grace is the mechanism of being able to accept the contradiction that you are. And therefore it's kind of like, at the heart of this kind of message.
Oh God, we got to do this more than every few years. Oh, so good. Hey, by the way, real quick, sorry. Hey, Dan, I just wanted to let you know, I just got your email. I'm really sorry that I didn't clarify. The talks are all on Facebook. Did you find it? Hopefully. Not in time.
Oh,
all good. We'll get it set up for next week.
And one more thing, just to add to this, is the reason why this is theological is, like, I know earlier I said about the object of desire and the object cause of desire, right? The object of desire is what you want. The object cause of desire is what gets in the way of what you want, but it's actually really what you want, right? So in a relationship, often, if you've been married to someone for a long time, for example, the desire might be gone. So a typical couple, desire disappears, then one of them has an affair. So let's say Jack and Jill, one of them has an affair. Oh, I talk about this next week, so maybe I shouldn't say too much, but very quickly I'll say this because I started. Jack has an affair with Snow White, and Jill finds out, and they decide to split, and they go, and he can be with Snow White. But that doesn't generally happen, right? So this couple that I'm thinking of, within a week, Jack and Jill are sleeping together again. Snow White's nowhere to be seen, right? Because here's the thing, Snow White's the object of desire, but Jill is the object cause of desire. So Jack can't be with Snow White because he's married. I'm married. I'm in a relationship. I can't be with you, right? That generates the desire. As soon as the object cause disappears, he's like, my goodness, I'd never want to go out with you. You're crazy, right? Now, Jill is the object of desire because there's a blockage, which is Snow White. So now he's desiring Jill. That's an obsessive. Jill in this example is an hysteric. An hysteric is someone who can only desire what's under threat of being taken away. So as soon as something is threatening to take her husband away, she now desires him. So for the obsessive, they can only desire what they don't have, and the hysteric desires what is under threat of being taken away. And so it happens again. The problem is, of course, they can't get these things in the same location. They can't get the object and the object cause of desire into the same location. What's this to do with Christianity? Very quickly, Jesus is the object cause of desire. Jesus is the one that's getting in the way of God. You have to crucify crucify Christ to get to God. But then we realize that the object cause of desire is the object of desire. So in Christianity, the object and the object cause of desire are found in one and the same site. And anyway, so there's this real theological notion that the life of faith is the person who is able to fully embrace the struggle of existence, which means the kingdom of God is within you in the struggle for the kingdom of God.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. I've got a bunch I want to jump into, but I want to go to Anthony real quick. Anthony, do you have a thought? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. I'll try to be brief, but yeah, I'm still processing what I heard. That was just really, really amazing, Dr. Rollins. Thank you for doing that. But yeah, I'm no stranger myself to anxiety. I think I was first diagnosed with an anxiety disorder when I was 7 or 8 years old, and it's been with me throughout my whole life that I've been anxious and never really found a great solution to that. And I've been on medication and therapy and all that. And the job I work, I'm a journalist, and it's of course a state of constant chaos because you never know what's going to come up from one day to the next, and it's a little bit taxing. So I guess where I'm going with this, you had a line early on in your first video that anxiety is the whirlwind of our potential, I believe, or something along those lines.
Kierkegaard said anxiety is the evidence of our freedom. Was that the line?
Yeah, it was along that sentiment, and that really stuck with me. But I guess my question is, do you have any advice maybe that's a little more on the practical level, just about somebody who does struggle with anxiety quite a bit, and that it's a big part of their lives, how they can find contentment in anxiety itself, really.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man, for asking that. And yeah, it's so easy for me to talk about this, but the reality is how to live it. Now, so Kierkegaard, the first thing he would say to you, but is that you are closer to the truth than most people. So the anxiety that you experience actually means that you are more in touch with the reality of what it is to be human, to be a subject, and to be free. Now, that doesn't mean a good thing. That can be a painful thing, as you've experienced. And that's why Jean-Paul Sartre said we're condemned to freedom. Now, a lot of people have the ability, for good or for bad, to shut that off. They have defense mechanisms that they put up that protects them from feeling too much anxiety. Artists, creative people, often their defense mechanisms aren't as good, and their anxiety is more on the surface, which makes them creative, intelligent, often very fascinating people, but it also is painful to live with. So the first thing I want to say to you is the good news. The good news is no matter how horrific it's been, what you're experiencing is a profound truth and a profound experience of reality that most people couldn't bear, and that is evidence of your freedom and evidence of your spirit. Kierkegaard also calls it spirit, by the way, anxiety. But nice as that sounds, you have to live, and you have to find ways in which that anxiety does not become overwhelming. and you've got a few choices. Sounds like you've experimented with them. So sometimes there's drugs that can help. You've done some therapy. Have you ever done psychoanalysis, by the way?
No, I've only really done cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, no, by the way, I'm not saying that psychoanalysis would work, but psychoanalysis is a type of therapy in which that I think is very good at kind of like both listening to the anxiety, because often it's about listening to it. Like it's not so much about trying to get rid of it, but trying to say, what is it saying, and what's it saying about your past, what's it saying about, like, really listening. And psychoanalysis is designed, so cognitive therapies are often designed to manage, as you know, manage anxiety. Psychoanalysis is designed to try to listen to it. And if you're interested, drop me an email and I can chat some more with you about where to find that. But the one thing I would say, just in light of this talk, is simply that what you're feeling, and I have a lot of friends who are in a similar boat to yourself. It's the sad truth is, it's what makes them so thoughtful and smart and creative. The very thing that is a curse for you is also something that it's almost worse for someone who's never experienced anxiety. I don't know, in some ways. Sorry.
Yeah, while I'm still unmuted, I just have one follow-up, if that's okay. But do you think it's useful that society sort of labels, things like anxiety and depression as disorders and sort of medicalizes it, when it's really just kind of a state of existence that we all go through at one point or another? I'm just curious about your thoughts on that, and I'll shut up.
Oh, no, thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah, and you're exactly right. My training is in philosophy and psychoanalytic theory, and in psychoanalysis, we do not like the DSM, and we're the pathologizing of things like anxiety. Now, it has its uses, right? So I'm not going to say it has its uses, but in psychoanalysis, the idea is that we're all abnormal, right? So we start with that, right? In psychoanalysis, we're all struggling with the lack. We're all struggling, but in psychoanalysis, there's three basic structures: neurosis, perversion, and psychosis, right? So, but all those words describe is different ways that we try to navigate and manage the contradictions of life. And then, so in psychoanalysis, there's no real interest in giving some diagnosis. It's all about listening to the symptoms and what are they saying, and helping, as you said, like, it's not about a disorder or a dysfunction. It's a mode of subjectivity. These are ways of trying to manage and navigate what it is to be a subject. So yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And actually, you would like Adam Phillips. Jim mentioned that book, Missing Out, but I would recommend any book by Adam Phillips. Or there's a great guy as well called Darian Leader. Darian Leader there's a book called The New Black, and also What is Madness. But Darian Leader as well is a great writer who would really confirm what you're saying.
Thank you.
Thanks a ton, Anthony. Thanks for asking those questions. That's really helpful. I think it's interesting. One of the thoughts that I had, and this is, again, our hope is, and I won't say any more about this until we have a chance to chat more, but our hope is to do another small group, actually more like this without the liturgy, but where we're going to talk through sort of those three things Pete just mentioned, the psychotic, neurotic, and pervert. So we're going to try and set that up for maybe early next year. But one of the things I noticed when I heard you say that was my experience of the traditional church has been to manage anxiety in the way that you're talking about traditional behavioral therapy managing anxiety, and that what we're trying to do distinctively at Collective is to learn how to listen to anxiety rather than manage it. Yeah. And you sort of see the church as the role of the analyst, right?
Oh, yes.
Project that, yeah. And so that would be more aligned with, learning how to listen to that.
100%. So in a way, if I put it very succinctly, let's use the word priest and psychoanalyst. The psychoanalyst starts with your individual issues, right? So they will talk about your history, they'll get to know you as an individual, and they will help you experience your own contradictions. The priest does that with a community, not your personal history, but helps you encounter and by the way, I make a big deal of my God, why have you forsaken me? Which for Hegel is the moment in which the not at oneness of God is revealed. The reality itself is not at one, right? So the priest brings the whole community into that experience. And there's a little bit of an in-between. And so, yeah, there is this connection. And I'll say one final thing about this as well, and then over to you again, but is that the word symptom, Lacan, makes a big deal of, well, two words, symptom, and the old French spelling, which we can call symptom. That's SYTHOM, symptom, right? So a symptom is a contradiction in your life that you can work through. The symptom is the ultimate contradiction that makes you who you are, that you can't get rid of without getting rid of yourself. But symptom sounds like holy man, right? And what is a holy man? A holy man is someone who speaks the truth. And if you listen to the holy man, you will, and repent, which means change, you will be transformed. If you don't listen to the holy man, the prophet, disaster will happen. So in this sense, if you listen to your symptom is not something to get rid of, but something to listen to. It's telling you a truth. When you cannot speak your truth will find a way to speak. And your symptom is the way that the truth is speaking that cannot be spoken by yourself consciously. So it is the unconscious speaking of truth. And in the Bible, there's a beautiful verse that says, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. Which obviously doesn't mean you'll know 2 + 2 = 4. It means that you'll be able to know the truth that is hidden, repressed within you. And just bringing that to the surface is enough to bring freedom. So I like that idea of the symptom.
Yeah. The symptoms. Yeah. The familiarity with that from some of your prior work about being able to listen to those prophets. And I think that's, to your point, the ability to do that as a community, especially in this age, during COVID, during Black Lives Matter. But, thinking about, and to your point, thinking about the Hebrew prophets, like the reason they speak up is because there's a contradiction between the holiness that's proclaimed by the people and the fact that they're taxing and enslaving one another. And so the prophets have to say, hey, here's a symptom, here's a contradiction you have to face.
That's it. And symptoms, as you'll have heard me say this before, but it's a Freudian idea. Symptoms are not the problem. They're the solution to a problem. So whenever someone says an alcoholic, the alcohol is not the problem. It's the solution to a problem. And if you treat it as the problem, then they'll maybe be able to give up the alcohol, but then they'll do something even worse, like CrossFit, right? Or they'll drink Diet Coke or something, right? Something else will take its place. But if you're able to realize what is the problem that the alcohol is the solution for, then the alcoholism will dissipate. So in the same way, when there's explosions in our bodies or in society that we think are the problem, we go like, no, they are in a sense. So for example, we could say homelessness is a problem, but what if homelessness is the solution to a problem? There's issues in our society, maybe with underemployment, with unemployment, maybe with mental health provisions,
affordable housing.
Horrible, yeah, exactly. So so our solution to that is to have a homeless population that we can manage and put in like places and whatever. But if we are able to, so in this way, the point of going to the homeless is not because you're good news to them, it's because they are good news to you. They are the voice of God to us. They are the call to basically show us the truth that we are repressing, so that we can hear that truth and respond to it. So we do that work, not because we can be God to the other, but because they will be God to us. They are the instrument of our further conversion.
Yeah, the evangelism stuff. I'm actually going to use that as a quick segue. Do we have any other big time questions? Otherwise, I'm going to kind of segue this and wrap it up. What are you laughing at, Dan?
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, he's not unmuted. I love you, Dan. I just had to get in on the joke.
You'll have to go to chat afterwards.
Okay, will do. So what were you just talking? Oh yeah. Being evangelized by the other and the way that helps us with the symptom. I think so for those of you who have been around the last few weeks, Pete hasn't been on, but we just finished a few weeks on the affordable housing crisis. And I think this fits in perfectly with the way that we've been trying to talk about, what it means for us to hold representatives accountable locally because of the contradictions between the professed values of our community and this massive homeless problem. And you're absolutely right. The homeless population is the solution to the way we feel about development and the way we feel about, local infrastructure. And currently, that's how it is. So we've got to change that. The interesting thing I was thinking about too, just in terms of what, the value of an event like this, the value of getting access to Pete, part of what we've been thinking about recently, especially with Jess, our director of operations, leaving, she did a lot of the marketing. And so we've been asking the question, what is this community? Who is it for? Who does it appeal to? What is it providing? And I think one of the major distinctives is to find a religious community who is living from that same sense of asking, seeking, and knocking. But what they're inviting people into is not the answering and the opening, but the asking. And I think that so often the evangelism of religious groups is an invitation into their answers rather than into the acknowledgement that asking is the answer. And I think that if nothing else, that's sort of what I heard very powerfully tonight, what I was reminded of, in that the idea that when, if you take that initial reading of ask and you shall receive, it's transactional. You do something on the front end to get something on the back end. And I think what you're talking about, that the ability to hold the contradictions, is how transformation happens. We hold those things next to each other and become the kind of people who can hold both at the same time.
Yes. I mean, you said it beautifully. I mean, the funny thing is we often think, this is a very Jewish notion, but we often think that we enter, say, a religious community when we have the answer. But within the Jewish tradition, it's more, no. If you have the answer, you go off somewhere else, right? It's when you enter to be part of an ongoing conversation, a question that has been happening thousands of years before you were born and will be going on thousands of years after you die. And what you're entering into is a passion for the question. It's like going into an art gallery. Often, I think, in our modern mindset, we think that it's getting the right interpretation of the painting that's important. But for an art lover, it's not. It's loving the painting. It's seeing different things in the painting. It's allowing it to speak in ever new ways as you engage with it differently. So I won't do it now, but I've got lots of Jewish parables that basically the conclusion is, if you think you got the answer, you're not ready for the life of faith. Because what you're doing is you're entering into a community who want to be evangelized, i.e., who go, there's so much of me in darkness that needs to be transformed by the other, and who also go, and I don't have the answer, but I've got a passion for this question that drives me. Yeah, so.
Man, let me wrap it up this way, because I think this just hit me, and it's beautiful. We've really been maybe the last 6 weeks especially, been trying to state more clearly sort of our, some of the imagery that we use with our congregation as a school of love. And I think it works so well, especially with holding the tension of contemplation and enjoyment. You think of a school of love as having both classroom time and lab time. And I think you've got both the experience of life and the contemplation of life. And it's not a church where we're trying to advocate that it's one or the other, but where we're trying to learn how to live with the tension of both. And yeah, that creates anxiety, but that's also, I think that's the name of the practice, is to learn how to do that together.
Great.
Oh, thank you guys so much. This was awesome. If you've got more questions, we'll do this again after the talk next week. We will have more clarity in our marketing and stuff going out this week. Apologies for any of the confusion. So what will happen is, same thing as this week at 5 o'clock, the liturgy with Pete's talks will go live on Facebook Live. So we'll all watch that together on Facebook Live. And YouTube, if you want to do YouTube, the quality is even better. You can chat on that as well. So we'll chat on the Facebook Live chat during the liturgy with the talk in it, and then immediately after we'll jump over to the Zoom and have some more Q&A. Appreciate you a bunch, Pete. Thanks. Great to see a bunch of your faces tonight, guys. We will. These videos should be up on our YouTube channel in the next few days, so you can catch up and watch them again. And we'll be ready for more good stuff next week. Appreciate you all. Love you. Thanks, Pete.